The Incident at Café Lumière. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Café Lumière, casting golden patterns across the polished wood floors. Maya Chen moved with practiced grace behind the counter, her delicate hands with 5 slender fingers working the espresso machine with precision. At 27, she had the kind of unassuming beauty that didn't demand attention. Almond-shaped brown eyes that missed nothing, shoulder-length black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and a smile that appeared genuine but rarely reached those observant eyes. 1 vanilla latte and 2 Americanos, she called softly, placing the drinks on the counter for the waiting customers. Maya had worked at the upscale cafe for nearly 2 years, saving for the culinary school she dreamed of attending. The cafe, situated in the ground floor of the Pinnacle Tower, home to several prestigious tech companies, catered to a clientele of executives, developers, and entrepreneurs who barely noticed the people serving them. That Tuesday morning was unusually busy. With a tech conference happening on the building's 30th floor, Maya wiped her brow with the back of her hand, feeling a drop of sweat threatening to fall. The cafe manager had called in sick, leaving her to handle the morning rush with only one inexperienced new hire for support. "Order for table 12, her colleague whispered urgently. "They've been waiting 15 minutes. Maya nodded, quickly preparing a tray with 3 pour-over coffees and assorted pastries. She navigated through the crowded space, balancing the heavy tray with both hands, her 10 fingers gripping the edges carefully. At table 12 sat 3 people whose expensive attire and loud conversation marked them as executives. Connor Phillips, a broad-shouldered man with a perfectly tailored suit and cold blue eyes, was speaking animatedly, gesturing with his hands, each with 5 fingers adorned with a signet ring on the right pinky. Beside him sat Vanessa Reed, her blonde hair styled in an immaculate bob, her slim arms crossed as she laughed at whatever Connor was saying. The third person, Tyler Nguyen, leaned back in his chair, his shrewd eyes scanning the room with a calculating gaze. "Your order," Maya said quietly, placing the tray on their table. Connor barely acknowledged her presence, continuing his story about their recent acquisition of a struggling startup. They never saw us coming. By the time they realized what was happening, we'd already gutted their core team. "Excuse me," Maya said, slightly louder. "Would you like anything else?" Vanessa glanced at her with irritation. "No, that's all." As Maya turned to leave, Tyler called out, "Actually, can I get some water?" "Of course," Maya replied, turning back toward their table. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. Connor, apparently finding something hilarious in Tyler's comment, threw his head back in laughter, his arm swinging out and knocking directly into Maya's legs. She stumbled, her body thrown off balance, and in her attempt to steady herself, she bumped the water pitcher on their table. Cold water splashed across the table and onto Vanessa's cream-colored blouse. The executive let out a shriek of indignation, jumping to her feet. "You stupid girl," she hissed, eyes blazing. "Do you have any idea how much this outfit costs?" "I'm so sorry," Maya stammered, reaching for napkins. "It was an accident." Connor grabbed his glass of ice water and with deliberate cruelty tossed it directly at Maya. The freezing liquid drenched her face and chest, soaking through her white uniform shirt. "There, now we're even," he said with a smirk. The cafe fell silent. Customers stared, but no one intervened. Tyler laughed nervously while Vanessa began dabbing at her blouse, muttering about incompetent staff. "Maybe next time you'll watch where you're going," Connor added, his voice carrying across the quiet cafe. "Some of us have important meetings to attend." Maya stood frozen, water dripping from her chin, her eyes wide with shock and humiliation. Her hands, 10 fingers trembling, clutched at her soaked shirt. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor and vanish from the judgmental stares. What none of them noticed was the man who had just entered the cafe. Elijah Blackwood stood in the doorway, his tall frame motionless as he observed the scene. His dark eyes, normally warm when they looked at Maya, turned to ice as they fixed on the 3 executives. At 35, Elijah projected an aura of quiet authority. His tailored charcoal suit concealed the physique of someone who spent dedicated hours in private gyms, and his seemingly relaxed posture masked a tensed readiness. Elijah watched as his wife of 8 months endured this public humiliation, his expression betraying nothing while his mind catalogued every detail. The man's signet ring, the woman's designer watch, the third executive's company badge partially visible on his belt. His 2 hands curled into fists at his sides, 10 fingers flexing slowly as he suppressed his immediate instinct to intervene. Instead, he pulled out his phone and, with a few quick taps of his fingers, instructed his driver to record the executives when they exited the building. Then he slipped back out the door unnoticed by anyone, including Maya. That evening, when Maya finally returned to their penthouse apartment, Elijah was waiting with dinner prepared, a glass of wine poured, and a sympathetic smile that revealed nothing of what he had witnessed or what he had set in motion during the hours since. "Rough day?" he asked gently, wrapping his strong arms around her. His hands, each with 5 fingers that had signed documents destroying careers before, now tenderly stroking her back. Maya nodded against his chest, unaware that her soft-spoken husband had already identified Connor Phillips, Vanessa Reed, and Tyler Nguyen as executives of Helix Innovations, and had already begun mapping out their destruction. Calculated moves. Maya's sleep was restless, her mind replaying the humiliation from earlier that day. Beside her, Elijah lay awake, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. When her breathing finally deepened into sleep, he slipped silently from their bed. In his home office, the blue glow of multiple monitors illuminated Elijah's face as his fingers, all 10 of them moving with practiced efficiency, danced across the keyboard. Within minutes, he had comprehensive profiles of all 3 Helix Innovations executives displayed before him. Connor Phillips, CEO and majority shareholder, had built his reputation by acquiring struggling tech startups, stripping them for valuable talent and patents, then discarding the remains. His personal life appeared immaculate. Trophy wife, 2 children at elite private schools, and a carefully cultivated public image of philanthropy. But beneath the surface, Elijah quickly uncovered a web of offshore accounts, an ongoing affair with his assistant, and suspicious trading patterns that skirted securities regulations. Vanessa Reed served as chief marketing officer, known for her ruthless campaigns that regularly crossed ethical lines. Her recent divorce had left her financially vulnerable, with heavy mortgage payments on her Malibu home and a lifestyle that outpaced even her substantial income. Tyler Nguyen, the chief technology officer, had the most interesting profile. A brilliant programmer with a gambling problem he thought no one knew about. His substantial debts to some unsavory characters were carefully hidden from his colleagues and the board. "Perfect," Elijah whispered, his wedding ring catching the light as his hand, 5 fingers curled around a crystal tumbler of scotch, raised the drink to his lips. The people who had humiliated his wife had no idea who she was married to, no concept of the resources at his disposal. Few knew that Elijah Blackwood had risen from nothing, that before becoming a venture capitalist with a golden reputation, he had navigated the brutal underworld of international finance where fortunes were made and lost, through methods that never appeared in business textbooks. His legitimate business front, Blackwood Ventures, was merely the tip of an iceberg of influence that extended into every corner of the city. As dawn broke, Elijah returned to bed, sliding his arm, muscular but not bulky, around Maya's sleeping form. She instinctively curled against him, one of her hands with its 5 delicate fingers coming to rest against his chest. When Maya woke, Elijah was already dressed for work, offering her coffee in her favorite mug. She noticed dark circles under his eyes. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, reaching up to touch his face with gentle fingers. "Just work on my mind," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How are you feeling this morning?" Maya shrugged, her slender shoulders rising beneath her silk robe. "Embarrassed, but I'll get over it. Just another entitled customer, right?" Elijah nodded, his jaw tightening imperceptibly. "You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of treatment." "It's nothing," she insisted, both hands, 10 fingers wrapping around her coffee mug for warmth. "I've dealt with worse." Later that morning, Maya was surprised when Elijah appeared at the cafe during her break. He rarely visited her at work, his schedule typically packed with meetings and calls. "What's this?" she asked as he led her to a quiet corner table, away from curious eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice low and intimate as he took her hands in his. "Maybe it's time you pursue that culinary dream. Quit this place, start your school application." Maya's eyes widened. "But the tuition is not an issue," he finished for her, squeezing her fingers gently. "Elijah, we talked about this. I want to earn it myself. I'm not with you for your money." His expression softened, genuine tenderness replacing the calculated look he'd worn all morning in meetings. I know that. It's one of T. The first dominoes fall. Connor Phillips straightened his tie as he prepared to address the Helix Innovations Board. The quarterly meeting was typically his moment to shine, and today he had particularly good news about their aggressive acquisition of TechSphere, a promising AI startup. Gentlemen, ladies, he began confidently, our strategy is exceeding even our most optimistic projections. His presentation was interrupted when his assistant entered, her face pale. I'm sorry, Mr. Phillips, but there's an urgent call from Riverbank. They insist on speaking with you immediately. Connor excused himself, irritation evident in his stride as he left the boardroom. 20 minutes later, he returned, visibly shaken. The bank had inexplicably frozen Helix's acquisition credit line, citing regulatory concerns. Across town, Vanessa Reed stared in disbelief at her computer screen. The carefully orchestrated marketing campaign for their flagship product had been pulled from 3 major platforms overnight. Alleged copyright infringements that she knew were fabricated had triggered automatic removals. Her phone buzzed with increasingly panicked messages from her team. Tyler Nguyen's day began even worse. He awoke to find his private gambling debts had somehow been leaked to the board's anonymous tip line. A preliminary internal investigation was already underway, and his access to company systems had been restricted. None of them connected these disasters to the quiet barista at Café Lumière or her husband, who at that moment sat in his corner office reviewing their escalating troubles with cold satisfaction. Mr. Blackwood, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your wife is here. Elijah's demeanor transformed instantly as Maya entered. She wore a simple sundress that accentuated her slender arms and legs, her hair loose around her shoulders. This is a surprise, he said, rising to greet her with a kiss. I handed in my notice, and she announced, her 2 hands, 10 fingers fidgeting nervously, clasping and unclasping. You were right. It's time to pursue culinary school. Elijah's smile was genuine as he embraced her, his 2 strong arms encircling her waist. I'm proud of you. Maya pulled back slightly, studying his face. The strangest thing happened today. Connor Phillips came in looking terrible, like he hadn't slept. Then he got a call and practically ran out, white as a ghost. The universe works in mysterious ways, Elijah remarked, his expression neutral despite the triumph surging through him. That's not all, Maya continued, her voice lower. A woman came in looking for me, said she represents Emilio Cortez's restaurant group. They're interested in showcasing my Asian Latin fusion desserts at their new location. That's wonderful, Elijah said, his enthusiasm only slightly forced. He hadn't expected his arrangements to be quite so transparent. Maya's eyes narrowed. Elijah, I never told anyone about those recipes except you. And Emilio Cortez is famously selective about his partnerships. Caught, Elijah sighed. I may have mentioned your talents to some contacts. This is what you meant, isn't it? About making them understand their mistake. He nodded slowly. That's part of it, yes. Later that evening, as they shared dinner in their penthouse, Maya watched Elijah with new awareness. His 2 eyes, sharp and observant, occasionally glanced at his phone, checking updates she now understood were reports on the executive's mounting problems. Tell me everything, she finally said. I want to know exactly what you're doing. Elijah studied her for a moment before nodding. He explained how he had leveraged his banking contacts to flag Connor's questionable trading patterns, resulting in the credit freeze. How Vanessa's marketing campaigns had been scrutinized by an anonymous competitor who discovered her team had repurposed proprietary designs. How Tyler's gambling debts had been purchased by one of Elijah's shell companies and strategically exposed. This is just the beginning, he concluded, watching her carefully for signs of disapproval or fear. Instead, Maya surprised him by asking, Will they lose everything? That depends on them, Elijah answered honestly. If they're smart, they'll recognize the connection to you and make amends. And if they're not smart? His smile was cold. Then yes, they lose everything. That night, as they lay in bed, Maya's fingers traced the contours of Elijah's face. I'm not sure how to feel about all this, she admitted. Part of me is horrified, but another part... Another part? He prompted when she fell silent. Another part feels powerful, like I finally matter. Her voice was barely a whisper. Is that terrible? Elijah pulled her closer, his lips finding hers in the darkness. No, it's human. Their lovemaking was different that night, more honest, more raw. Maya's hands explored him with new boldness. Her 10 fingers claiming territory she now understood was far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. Elijah surrendered to her touch with a vulnerability he showed to no one else. His carefully constructed walls momentarily lowered. In the quiet aftermath, as Maya drifted toward sleep in his arms, Elijah's mind returned to the 3 executives who were only beginning to understand the forces aligned against them. Desperate measures. 1 week later, the 3 Helix executives gathered in Connor's living room, the formal business setting abandoned as their professional lives continued to unravel. Connor paced on his 2 legs, his expensive shoes wearing a path in the plush carpet. Vanessa sat rigidly on the edge of the sofa, her 2 arms crossed defensively over her chest. Tyler hunched forward, his 2 hands with 10 trembling fingers clutching a glass of scotch. "This isn't coincidence," Connor stated flatly. "We're being targeted. But why?" Vanessa demanded. "And by whom?" "Our security team has found nothing concrete." Tyler took a long drink before speaking. "I've been thinking about this constantly. The timing started exactly after..." "After what?" Connor snapped. "After we threw water at that cafe girl," Tyler finished quietly. "Remember the way she looked at us? Like she was memorizing our faces?" Silence fell as the possibility took root. "That's absurd," Vanessa finally said, but without conviction. "She's just a barista." "Maybe not just a barista," Connor mused, his mind racing. "Check her background again. Find out who she knows, who she's connected to." Across town, Maya stood in the gleaming kitchen of Cortez's newest restaurant, presenting her signature dessert to the acclaimed chef. Her 2 eyes, bright with excitement, watched nervously as he tasted her creation. "Magnificent," he declared, genuine appreciation in his voice. "The balance of spices with the subtle sweetness. You have a gift." Maya beamed with pride that was untainted by her knowledge of Elijah's influence in arranging the opportunity. Her talent was real regardless of how the door had been opened. Later, as Elijah drove them home, Maya's phone chimed with a notification. She frowned at the screen. "What is it?" Elijah asked, one hand resting comfortably on the steering wheel. "Someone's requested access to my employment records at the cafe," she said slowly. "And there's been unusual activity on my social media accounts." Elijah's expression hardened. "They're looking for the connection. Is that bad for your plan?" "No," he replied, his voice calm despite the cold calculation taking place behind his words. "In fact, it's exactly what I expected. Phase 2 begins when they find us." The following morning, Connor Phillips received a detailed dossier on Maya Chen, including her marriage certificate to Elijah Blackwood. His blood ran cold as he recognized the name. "Blackwood Ventures," he whispered, immediately connecting the dots to one of the city's most influential investment firms. He called an emergency meeting with Vanessa and Tyler. "We've made a catastrophic error," he informed them, sliding the information across the table. "The barista is Blackwood's wife." Tyler paled visibly. "The Elijah Blackwood? The venture capitalist who collapsed Meridian Tech last year when their CEO insulted his proposal?" "The very same," Connor confirmed grimly. Vanessa's mind worked rapidly. "We need to neutralize this threat immediately. Apologize, make amends, whatever it takes." "It may be too late for that," Tyler pointed out. "We're already bleeding. The board is asking questions I can't answer." Connor's expression hardened. "Then we fight back. Everyone has vulnerabilities, even Blackwood." Their counterattack began with a carefully worded email to Elijah, acknowledging their awareness of the connection and proposing a meeting to resolve misunderstandings. Simultaneously, they engaged a private security firm to dig into Blackwood Ventures' recent transactions, searching for anything that could be leveraged. Elijah read their email with a thin smile, showing it to Maya across the breakfast table. "They found us. Will you meet with them?" she asked, spreading jam on her toast with a knife held in her right hand, 5 fingers gripping it carefully. "Eventually," he replied, "but not yet. Let them sweat a little longer." What Elijah didn't anticipate was the executive's desperation. That afternoon, Maya received a visitor at her culinary school orientation. Vanessa Reed, perfectly composed in designer business attire. "Mrs. Blackwood," Vanessa began, her voice honey-sweet, "I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to personally apologize for the unfortunate incident at the cafe." Maya's surprise quickly gave way to understanding. Unfortunate incident? You mean when your friend deliberately threw water at me for amusement? Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. A regrettable misunderstanding. We'd like to make amends, perhaps a donation to your culinary school, a mentorship opportunity with our marketing department. Maya studied the W. The reckoning, the private dining room at Azure, the city's most exclusive restaurant, fell silent as Elijah Blackwood entered with Maya at his side. She wore an elegant black dress that accentuated her graceful figure, her usual quiet demeanor replaced with confident poise. Elijah, impeccable in a custom suit, surveyed the room with calculated indifference. Connor, Vanessa, and Tyler stood as the couple approached, their earlier bravado diminished by the reality of facing the man who had systematically dismantled their professional lives over the past 2 weeks. Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, Connor began stiffly. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Elijah merely nodded, pulling out a chair for Maya before taking his own seat. The power dynamic was unmistakable. They were not there to negotiate, but to dictate terms. I believe you know why we're here, Elijah said finally, his voice measured and calm. We've become aware of a misunderstanding that occurred at Café Lumière, Connor stated carefully. We want to express our sincere apologies to your wife for any discomfort caused. Maya's laugh was soft but cutting. Discomfort? Is that what you call deliberately throwing water at someone for your amusement? Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his 2 legs restless beneath the table. Vanessa's perfectly composed face showed cracks of anxiety around her eyes. A regrettable lapse in judgment, Connor conceded. One that we're prepared to make amends for. And you believe that's possible? Elijah asked, his tone conversational despite the threat underlying his words. After you've begun digging into my past, looking for leverage? The executives exchanged alarmed glances. They hadn't expected him to know about their investigative efforts. We're facing the collapse of our company, Vanessa said bluntly. Careers and livelihoods are at stake. We're simply trying to protect our interests. As I protected mine, Elijah replied smoothly, my wife's dignity being chief among them. Connor leaned forward, desperation evident in his posture. Name your price. Whatever it takes to end this. Elijah remained silent, studying each of them in turn. The weight of his scrutiny made even Connor, a man accustomed to intimidating others, shrink back slightly. 2 weeks ago, Elijah finally said, you humiliated my wife because you believed she was powerless. You saw someone you considered beneath you and decided her dignity was worth less than your momentary amusement. His voice remained calm, but his 2 eyes had turned to ice. That miscalculation has cost you approximately $37 million in company valuation thus far, with your personal finances suffering comparable declines. The color drained from Connor's face as the precise figure confirmed what he had suspected. Every financial disaster had indeed been orchestrated. However, Elijah continued, glancing at Maya, I'm prepared to end this intervention under specific conditions. Hope flickered across the executives' faces. First, you will each personally donate $1 million to a scholarship fund for culinary arts students from disadvantaged backgrounds, Elijah stated. Second, Helix will establish a comprehensive anti-harassment policy with actual consequences, including immediate termination for behavior like yours. Third, you will each perform 200 hours of community service at homeless shelters in the city, where you'll serve people you consider beneath you. And if we refuse? Tyler asked, immediately regretting the question when Elijah's gaze turned to him. Then I continue, Elijah said simply. Phase 3 involves criminal investigations into securities fraud, tax evasion, and in your case, Mr. Nguyen, some rather interesting conversations with your gambling creditors. The silence that followed was deafening. You have 24 hours to comply, Elijah concluded, standing to signal the end of the meeting. As they prepared to leave, Maya suddenly spoke. Wait, there's one more condition. She turned to face the 3 executives, her quiet voice carrying unexpected authority. You will each individually return to Café Lumière tomorrow. You will apologize to every staff member for the toxic environment your behavior creates, and you will do so sincerely. Connor's face flushed with anger and humiliation, but Elijah's warning glance silenced any protest. 24 hours, Elijah repeated, guiding Maya toward the door with his hand resting lightly on her lower back. Outside in their car, Maya released a shaky breath. That was intense. Elijah studied her with new appreciation. Your additional condition was unexpected. Public humiliation deserves a public apology, she said simply. Will they actually do it? They will, he confirmed. They have too much to lose. True to Elijah's prediction, the following day brought 3 subdued executives to Café Lumière during the morning rush. One by one, they apologized to the staff, their words stiff but sincere enough to satisfy Maya, who watched from a corner table where she sat with Elijah. Justice served, Elijah murmured, his hand covering hers on the table. Almost, Maya replied. She stood and approached Connor as he finished his apology to the last barista. Mr. Phillips, she said, drawing his attention. Recognition flashed in his eyes, followed by carefully controlled resentment. Mrs. Blackwood. I wanted to thank you, she said, surprising him. Thank me? He echoed, confused. For showing me something important. Maya smiled, the expression genuine despite the circumstances. You thought power meant you could treat others however you wanted without consequences. My husband showed me that real power is having the ability to destroy someone, but choosing precision and justice instead. Connor's gaze shifted between her and Elijah, who watched from a distance. Your husband is a dangerous man. Yes, Maya agreed. But unlike you, he uses that danger in service of something greater than his ego. Later that evening, as Maya and Elijah sat on their penthouse balcony watching the city lights, she rested her head against his shoulder. What would you have done if I hadn't asked you to limit the damage? She asked softly. Elijah was quiet for a moment, his fingers, 5 on each hand that had signed both destruction and mercy, entwined with hers. Something I would have regretted eventually. Because it would have hurt innocent people? Because it would have disappointed you, he corrected, turning to meet her gaze. Maya leaned in to kiss him, understanding now the full measure of the man she had married, both his capacity for ruthlessness and his willingness to be tempered by her compassion. His 2 arms encircled her, pulling her closer as the kiss deepened. No more secrets? She whispered against his lips. No more secrets, he agreed, his 2 eyes, warm now as they looked at her, reflecting the city lights. The reckoning was complete. Justice served with a precision that targeted only those deserving of consequences. In the weeks that followed, Maya would start her culinary journey in earnest, while Elijah continued his business empire with a new perspective, one that balanced power with responsibility, vengeance with mercy. And if sometimes the executives of Helix Innovations woke in a cold sweat, remembering how quickly their lives had nearly been destroyed by a man whose quiet, unassuming wife they had carelessly humiliated, perhaps that too was justice of a sort. The lingering awareness that in this world, everyone eventually faces the consequences of their actions.